Okay, I'm back. This is Mental Illness School Shootings Part 2. I got enough people that are interested in this topic that I'm going to do a second installment. There has to be many of these installments, unfortunately, because I'm going to do them in short spurts. I know it's difficult to sit down and watch a long video on this. I've written a paper on this, 2 papers on this. I could read those off, but basically this is extemporaneous. And I'd like to answer questions that come up from comments on each of these videos that I'm going to do. So I brought up the topic of mental illness because of these shootings was the impetus of this. The shootings just occurred, an hour down the street here. But this is a major issue. It's gone on for 50 plus years now in the United States. And we watch the news, we talk to each other. What can be done? What can be done? Well, it's chaos. We're sitting back and saying, why is it chaos in the United States? Why can't anything be done? And because it is chaos, and I'm going to lay the blame again. And each time I make one of these, I'm going to lay the blame on the profession of psychiatry and psychology. But psychiatry, because they're organized, they're wealthy, they're the people that we turn to with all these matters. And nowadays in general medicine, apparently our doctors in training are told, always go to the psychiatrist. If there's an issue, just, wash your hands of it and refer it to the psychiatrist. Well, the psychiatrists are obviously getting the wrong training. I deal with residents, medical residents, every day that I work at the hospital. They are clueless as far as psychiatric medicine is concerned. They're clueless. So I assume that these young doctors continue that way as they get older. So this is a major point I'm going to continue over and over again as I get into the nitty-gritty details about this topic. So first I'm going to get a couple of points out of the way. These are bones of contention that I hear all the time. Number one is the stigma. We have to get over the stigma of talking about mental illness. Mental illness, the way I look at it, is a medical condition. And indeed, the way the medical profession should be looking at it is that it is a medical condition. And nowadays, they're starting to get the proof through MRIs that, yes, it is a medical condition. If you look at an MRI of a brain, a normal, so-called normal brain, and a brain of a person suffering from schizophrenia, they're 2 completely different MRIs. The patient with schizophrenia, that brain is lit up. And very recently they found on MRI the spot within the brain that is responsible for depression. These are major issues here. So there's big problems that people aren't trained for this. We're not doing testing for this. And when the tools are beginning to be there for this, and there's no reason when we scan everybody that comes through the door that's got an ache, we give them a CAT scan and an MRI. There's no reason that we shouldn't be doing it for those people who are suffering mental illness. So again, I talked about psychiatric professors some decades ago deciding that they're going to call themselves behavioral health because they think that people with these disorders, illnesses, create their own problems. Back when, it must have been the 60s, 70s, I'm not sure when it was, there was a theory called self-medication hypothesis. It was debunked by the community of psychiatrists at the time. It is the problem today, and everybody, all the families I deal with that have these situations in their family believe in self-medication hypothesis, and that is that people out there who are alcoholics, who are drug addicted, etc., suffering, basically, they medicate themselves for this irritation, this uncomfortableness that they have, whether it's just a psychology problem or whatever, but they medicate themselves and then become addicted. I personally am in a minority, a very small minority of people that don't believe in addiction so much as in self-medication, being that the drug or substance of use that they choose to use is something that they can get their hands on, and then so they use that to medicate themselves. So I don't believe in addiction so much. I believe in that they're using these substances to control or medicate themselves, because basically the profession, our healthcare profession, isn't helping them. It's not helping them. So first, let's deal with stigma. You know, I don't remember, it's been so long for me, that if I considered it a stigma to consider the embarrassment of talking about someone or something in your own background that like mental illness. It used to be in the old days that people would avoid it completely, you know, because of the behaviors, I imagine. You know, people behave strangely, and therefore there was a stigma attached to mental illness. I understand that. We have to get over that. And we can get over that by understanding that there is, in my opinion, vast majority of cases, a medical condition that creates these problems. We've gotten over it a little bit, you know, with political correctness, that you know, that we tend to accept people who are a little bit different, or acting a little bit different. That's a good thing. But we've gone way too far with it. And believe me, when I talk about these videos, I'm not a bleeding heart. You know, I believe in, you know, responsibility, self-responsibility, taking care of yourself. I also believe in families taking care of all these folks that suffer from these disorders. In different countries, the families themselves take care of these patients, such as in India that I have traveled to several times. You know, you don't see it so much. The family kind of hides it. There's probably a stigma, a real stigma attached to it, and they hide it in the best way that they can. They keep the people in homes and that sort of thing. Well, you know, and that's good in a way, but, you know, there is medication available that can treat these people. So let's get over the stigma part of this. You know, we all know, or we have people in our family, or we've had experience with people who have mental illness, and I add into those the subject of mental illness, addictions, because I'm convinced that many addictions are caused by mental illness. People are suffering. They self-medicate themselves. So stigma, get over it. We're going to talk about it up front here. You may have people in your family, you may have been suffering some of these things yourself, but are perfectly capable of going on. But you've got to get over the stigma part of it. The other thing is there's two bones of contention that I always hear from, that bad people exist, and just people are bad choices, and that's what most of this is. Well, I agree to a certain extent that bad people do exist. People make bad choices for different reasons, greed, etc. Okay, that's part of the issue. Bad people making bad choices. And again, I'm not a bleeding heart in this. I carry a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol pretty much everywhere I go, and I have for most of my life. I understand that. And I understand that we need to protect ourselves and protect the population from bad people who make bad choices. Okay, that's a small amount of the problem, I agree. The other thing is, I always get people coming at me about evil. Evil exists, and the devil made him do it, that sort of thing. And this is something we hear with this latest shooting, that he was hearing voices, this fellow down here, 19-year-old man, that he was hearing voices, and the demons made him do it. I just saw on TV, someone interviewing the Vice President of the United States, and they're saying, they reiterated that same thing, and the interviewer was saying, does that mean that's an attack on your faith, that you heard voices and therefore it was God speaking or whatever? And the vice president played right into it. He played right into it. He said, well, it's an attack on my faith. Guess what, folks? People hear voices with mental illness. There's an ad on television right now running that says 50% of people who suffer Parkinson's disease have hallucinations, psychosis. They hear things. Guess what? Parkinson's disease is a disease of the brain, of the neurotransmitters in the brain. And you know what? That's what mental illness is. It's that same thing. It's a neurotransmitter brain disorder. So yes, evil exists. And this doesn't take anything away from the folks who have religion as their profession. And I think that's why a lot of clergy shy away from this. Guess what? I believe in the devil. I believe in heaven. I believe in hell. I also believe, and this is my own belief, that the devil uses anything he can to create chaos. And why wouldn't he be using these people who suffer from these neurological brain disorders? Done. Evil exists, the devil exists, and these people are primed to be used by an evil being. So let's get that out of the way right away so that I can talk about the nitty-gritty of this thing, the things that I've learned and have experienced through years and years of practice here. There is hope out there. It's hard work. So in the following videos, I'm going to talk about my observations, the proofs that these observations work, and hopefully give some helpful suggestions. Now, I had one comment that about a senior person who was had been difficult all of their life, and it weighed on the family tremendously. Frankly, if that person is alive and doing okay by themselves, there's not much you can do at this point if they're a senior person. We're talking about middle-aged and younger people, and interacting with them and getting them, on the proper medication. I'll give you one point here that's practical before I finish part two here, and that is most people who suffer from these disorders, whether they're alcoholics, addicted persons, just people suffering from mental illness, anxiety, etc., are extremely intelligent people. And the reason I believe that they're extremely intelligent is that their brain waves are going like this. They're, fast. Their brains are moving fast, but they are really super intelligent for the majority of them. So even though you don't think they're listening, and they're taking it in. They're always looking for the cause, the reason, help. They're looking for safety. They're looking for, the answer. So if you're honest with them, and this is information that I use all the time, if you're honest with them and go right to them and say, look, this is why you are like you are, in my opinion. I always qualify it. Again, I'm not a physician. I'm not a doctor. I'm not even a psychiatric professional person. I do it full time because I'm a bedside nurse. But this is all practical experience. So if you say to them, this is why you've been suffering all this time. I do it all the time at work. And you know what they do? They stop whatever they're doing and they put out their hand and shake my hand. And more often than not, they say, you're the first one that understands. That's the end of part two.